Hello guys, how you doing? This is JP Saracolia, and once again I come to you with another book review, and this time I'm going to review the Spider-Man Omnibus by Todd McFarlane. This is a continuation of the Amazing Spider-Man Omnibus, which I already reviewed. It was my first actually book review some years ago, and now I get the chance to review what I considered actually a companion to that collection. It's a very tiny omnibus. I wouldn't even consider this an omnibus. This is more like a minibus or like a companion omnibus, which it's kind of sad, but it contains all the issues where he was, participated on this run. Spider-Man by Todd McFarlane, as you know, is the original format. You see there's no many comic books here. The book that transformed comics, in a matter of speaking. And as you can see, Todd McFarlane had already changed the way the world looked at Spider-Man, and by launching a new title, writing and drawing the wall crawler, he tore up the rule book once again. Now his entire best-selling Spider-Man series is collected in one stunning volume, collecting Spider-Man 1 to 14 and 16 and X-Force number 4, written and illustrated by Todd McFarlane with Liefeld and Fabian Nicieza. This was actually one of the first books in the omnibus line that had the wrap-up cover of course, in the binding, which is kind of cool. I really like it. The only thing I don't like about, I really like the art. The only thing I don't like about mine is that it comes with little stains, and that actually came from the factory that way when I purchased it. I purchased this through in-stock trades. I didn't want to just call them and just get complaining about it and get me a new one, but you can see there's a little glue stains here and there. It's what it is. I'm sorry, this is a factory defect. It doesn't really affect the book. It's just kind of sad. And normally, you have the wrap, the dust jacket, so it's not a big deal. But definitely, the wraparound art is pretty cool, and definitely like this new approach to it. Now, going into the book, as you can see, this is the intro, Spider-Man by Todd McFarlane. And you have the artist. Primarily you have Todd, but you also have Liefeld, Fabian Nicieza, and then you have other people, inkers and people involved. And here's the table of content. Spider-Man by Todd McFarlane. It has all the issues, has a list of them, and goes straight to it. And this is Spider-Man and the storyline, the first storyline called Torment. As you know, this was a best-selling book. At some point, it was the biggest best-selling book of all times. It was overpassed by X-Force 1 and then of course by X-Men 1. But as you know, Todd McFarlane wasn't really happy with the way things were unfolding for him at Marvel Comics. He was definitely ready to go. But before he was planning to go, he was already really going in that direction. He decided, the Marvel didn't want to let him go because they were making a lot of money with him. It was a time when Marvel was extremely successful. They were beating DC by a mile, so they needed this artist to stay. So they offered him his own book with his own, where he could start writing his own stories. Many would consider the stories that Todd McFarlane not the best. Part of his abilities would be to be a writer. He's definitely not a good writer. But he was given the chance. And you know what? A lot of people were buying it. A lot of people were very happy with the opportunity. And of course, it sold a lot of money. Now, the thing, it sold a lot of issues, so it made a lot of money. But one of the things about these stories, which are very extremely cheesy, are not as good as The Amazing Spider-Man, is how dark the stories are. And as you know, Todd, he's very, very dark with his stories, and that happens. You can see that reflected in what he did with Spawn, which follows up after he left Marvel. And a lot of the things, the imprints, the blueprints of what Spawn would be are found here. Todd created Spawn when he was very young. He was a teenager when he came up with the idea. According to him, when he was 16 years old, he came up with that idea. And he went and he did, he created all that stuff. He went into comics. It started with DC, started doing some small jobs for DC. As always, DC is always good in finding people. They're really bad at keeping people. But they, during that time, it was the case, and it's always been the case historically. So ultimately, he ended up at Marvel, which actually was the opportunity that he needed. And of course, he ended up with Amazing Spider-Man, which he became extremely popular with Spider-Man. People love what he did. He redefined the character's traits. decorates, he created, or in this case, made the spaghetti weaving very, very popular. The way he did, he is very good with close-ups. That's what he does a lot of close. He makes everything a little more dynamic. Make those big eyes on Spider-Man, which looks extremely cool. So when he was given that opportunity, he took it and ran with it and made the Spider-Man extremely popular. And of course, when the opportunity, he just wasn't unsatisfied with things were unfolding, that he didn't have much rights on it, although he was making good money, but not the money that he really wanted. And which I don't fault anyone. I think if you are part of the creative part, I mean, you're selling a product and people are buying it because your name is attached to it, then of course you should take more royalties out of it. But of course, that's how the comics work, is work for hire. So they were given this, and you can see this big splash. That's something that McFarlane has no rule about things. It's just he makes things look cool. Yeah, he's not the best artist per se, but what he has is the ability to make things look cool. And as you can see, but you can see that already he was going in a really dark path. And in this storyline, where you see with he's definitely, everything looks, with Lister, everything looks extremely dark and bloody and messy. So he was already he was already making some people upset, particularly people that were more familiar with the old Spider-Man. They didn't like Todd. He has detractors, he has enemies within the industry, but also within the fans. They didn't like his approach to it. So he was making enemies, but he was given the free room to do whatever he wanted, so he was just taking off. He was doing whatever he wanted. The stories were okay, but the art, and regardless of it, he was selling, people were buying it. As you can see, that dynamic layout that he does is not traditional. He does whatever he wants. You see all that. You see all the spider webbing, making it really dark and kind of like an horror movie. A lot of people didn't like that, which I respect, because I love the more clean-cut Spider-Man. But you cannot deny that he was making a difference, and he was going into very, very dark storyline. So as you can see right here, Craven, pretty much missing his face. Wow. Things like that. He was just really pushing it. But you can see, and the thing with this book is it's not that big. There's not many stories, and the stories are not like, you see part 4 of Torment. They're dark in tone, and they get darker as he goes along. But you can see a lot of the stuff he's creating, he's already developing the ideas, or he's already kind of fleshing out what Spawn would be. We definitely will take it to a different level, more horror, more dark tones. But that's something that he really felt comfortable with, and a lot of people dig. A lot of people love his approach to the comics and storylines and making it darker. I was gonna find this panel, this cover, to be very cool. To see that the destroy mask of Spider-Man, and he's just screaming. Oh, I love that. That's what makes it. This is one of the things about comics. If you want to sell comics, you have to create a cover. I think the most important thing is always a cover. The cover will dictate how the comic will be, or will really attract your attention. When you go to a comic book shop or store, it's just that cover that really attracts your eye. But you have to match up that cover with the interior art, and that he did it. That's the thing with McFarlane, did follow up through. It really kind of followed. You find, and I love this panel. You can see sometimes some comic book artists or comic books where you go and you look at the art of the cover. It looks so fantastic, and they have probably someone different than the one that is drawn inside. But once you go inside, it's just totally different, and it matches what the in this case the cover is, which to me is always disappointing, and that really stops me for buying those comics, because I don't like that. I want to see the artist. I want to be presented. I want to be given something that tells me what's going to be inside the story. It's going to match what's outside the story. So it is the approach, and I love this one. Look at that. You cannot say, well, yeah, he's not the best artist per se, but when you give him the ability to do, he does whatever he wants, and he does it the way he wanted to do it. The stories will be forgettable. The stories are really not that great, but the art alone, just the art, it just makes it, takes it to a higher level. But if you can see, And there's a new story here with the Goblin, where he's fighting the Goblin, and this is another one with the mask. This is definitely another one with even darker than before, a very demonic type of thing going on there. A lot of people dislike this, which I understand. As you can see here, the Ghost Rider, very cool. He's bringing different characters, as always. Mary Jane looking good, and this, the panels. It's all what it is. It's all about the panel layout. Yes, I know classic comics. I'm a fan of a lot of different eras of comics. I love classic panel layout, but I'm not gonna say that this wasn't cool then, and still looks cool after all these years. It's still kind of cool. The stories, I don't care much, but I can look at the art and say, wow, he was trying to do something different, and it really shows. And as you can see, definitely, this paper actually is not that bad. It's thin, but not too thin, which some of the newer omnibuses are having the problem with, which I don't consider a problem. It's just different quality. It has its pluses, it has its negatives. I love this, as you can see right here. Definitely, if I have to say something about Todd, I think he's a much better artist than people might give him credit for. Some people say that he's not as good. They compare him to Rob Liefeld, things like that. I prefer Todd over Rob's art, and I'm not trying to diss Rob, because I think he has improved. Wendigo. Oh, he looks big here. He covers both things. Good here. But I just like his storytelling. I think he's much better at it. And also, he was very wordy. And this story, he started getting into more convoluted writing, and he's trying to do more than what he really is. I don't think Todd will ever be a good writer. I don't think he's a writer. I think he's a great entrepreneur. He's a great creator. He has ideas. He can bring those ideas to the paper. But I don't see that. And as you can see, he's eating some fleshly meat. Definitely very, very, very dark in tone. So those are the things that people were like, okay, this is just too much. This is getting out of hand. And they were really, he was confronting a lot of, as you can see, love the stance. Didn't like this one, didn't like this cover as much. But if you come to this page, I really love this one. Really love that dark tone of, I'm always gonna love the classic Wolverine design over the newer 90s design. Well, this is still part of the 90s, but I'm saying the classic John Byrne design versus the Jim Lee design. I really kind of like that design. But you see, Spider-Man, when you talk about Spider-Man over all these years, if what defines Spider-Man is this personal traits, what defines Spider-Man is just the way he is, how his stories are lighthearted, but also have a greater message. And I feel that on these stories, you kind of lose some of that. It goes into more darker corners of it. But not saying that it was unnecessary. I just felt that it was too much for it. I think it was not the character for it. But at the same time, everyone, look at this. He looks very menacing there, very cool. At the same time, I feel that everyone has a different idea of who Spider-Man is, and that goes for any other character. Not everyone feels the same way about a character than others. My appreciation of Spider-Man or Batman or Superman or Wolverine are totally different from the appreciation that you have for the characters, or what it really inspired me. I think we're inspired in different ways, and I feel that this was the part. People want to push the envelope. Some people want to do more than just what you have seen, the status quo, which is good. Some people love the status quo. Some people prefer the original version over the newer versions. And with characters, especially in comics, after they have so long of a history, you're going to develop a different understanding of that character in regards to other people, and you're going to love a version over the other, an artist over the other, a writer over the other, a storyline over the other. That's the one that's going to define your memories and your understanding of that character. But yes, he was doing it. He was having a lot of backlash, going back to Todd at Marvel. Because of all the stories, there was a lot of critiques. A lot of people were sending a lot of hate mail saying, we don't like this Spider-Man. They need to change it. Although there were a lot of people sending that hate message, there were a lot of people buying it. So the thing is this, so you have a very divided group of people. Some people loving it, some people hating it. And That's how comics work. That's how everything works. That's how a movie works. As you can see with different new movies, with Star Wars movies, with Marvel movies, with DC movies. Some people love it, some people hate it, and I think it's understandable. You have to respect people for their opinions. But I think Marvel was trying to go on a different route. Look at that. How how lively that looks, how extreme that looks. Definitely, you gotta love it. And this story with Wendigo was okay. And of course, you got Sub City. It's part 1 of 2. This sold so many different comics. The collector comic books, and as you can see here, who that reminds you? Okay. Reminds you of that clown and Spawn. Here you can see already he's kind of playing the layout that will play out later on. You can see it. You can see it there. And he's really talking about really dark. He's going into really dark themes like child abuse and stuff like that. So really, he kind of is stretching. He's stretching things that a lot of people are not feeling comfortable with. Love this one. Love how he divided this. Things that we saw a lot with Spawn when he does with the chains, and you create different panels with the chains. So it's kind of cool. So you see that layout. This is definitely a collection for those that love Todd McFarlane. If you love Todd, you should have this, added. This adds to the previous Omnibus. This is definitely, to me, a companion, although it's hard to call it a companion because it's not complementing the other one. It's just continuing this, what it was done there. I don't think that they should have added to the other one. I think they did the right thing, but have it separately. Personally, would have believed, look at this crazy looking panel, this demonic faces. Okay, it's, that's Todd. And with the dark, with the black suit, which I always love the black suit. And going back and look at that, man, I get distracted with looking at all this. It's hard to really tell a story when you're really looking at art. At least in my opinion. I don't know you. Everyone is different, but in my case, man, I love it. It's just the way it is. And I can continue on. Look at that. And this, of course, is the starts from the sabotage part. This is actually Spider-Man, and this joins and with X-Force. And here you can see. Look at that. Always love this panel. Really do. Really do. The version of Juggernaut by Todd. Look at that. Cool. Not the best, but still cool. Kind of cartoony. Look at that Warpath. You can see my review of the X-Force Omnibus, where you'll see that. You'll see this is part of that too. So it's kind of you double dipping, but look at that. Look at those teeth. Mentioned that before. So many teeth. It's kind of cool that all this is included here. It's part of that collection. Kind of complements this one as well. Kind of adds up because it kind of gives a little bit of value to it. But look at that. Cable. Too much armor, that's for sure. This is actually, I didn't point that out on the previous review, but this something on that X-Force review. But look at this. Actually, it was edited, and this editing was what really upset Todd to leave Marvel. Finally, that was the last straw that broke the camel's back. This is definitely, as you can see right there. In the original, he was stabbed. His eye was just bleeding, stab, and they kind of painted into blood, dark blood, of course, instead of real blood. He was really upset about in this case, Marvel said, we cannot just have this type of thing going on, stabbings and stuff like that. We cannot have that. I see some blood there, so they had to edit it, so they didn't show the stabbing part, and Todd was really upset about that. He felt that he was compromised after he was given the opportunity to do something. They compromised it, so he walked out. And there's an interview that I'm going to post. Recent Todd McFarlane interviews where he talks not really talks about that situation, but talks about what he did. What really inspired him to do. Over time, inspire him to create. I think Todd is such a rich character as a person. He has his ways, but I think if you really pay close attention, you'll see that he's definitely this stab eye, but there's no blood. That he definitely, and this is actually Rob Liefeld. In going back to Todd, he's definitely a character where a person that has his own ideas of things, and he is very firm, and I think you can learn a lot from him, and the way he approaches things and the way he throws himself at things. He's visionary in his ways. He wants to do his thing. He wants to succeed. He wants to excel, and I think you can learn a lot from people like them. And I definitely praise him for that. He wasn't happy, so of course they got to finish the storyline, so they included it here, which is good. It's part of the X-Force, but and that's about it. And here you can see the polybacks. It has that, which I like about this collection. Marvel Omnibuses in general, they always have the extras for you to look at. But you can see the different polybacks, which really so many different issues or so many different versions of the covers for people to collect, which really kind of bump the people buying so they could resell, which back in the day was a thing. And definitely we're kind of getting back into it with a lot of collectible covers from different artists and all that, different variant covers, all of that, which I've never been a fan of. I think if you're going to sell something, just sell it straight up, the way for everyone. That's just my opinion. I'm not going to just buy an extra cover. Just a cover doesn't make the comic book. But some are cooler than others. But in my opinion, if you're going to have the cooler one, then you have cooler one for everyone. But hey, that's besides the point. I've never been a fan. I never understood the concept or the desire to have variants of things. But that's how it is, and that goes for statues too. I've never been a fan of, we have the special one like some companies do. We have this extra little piece if you buy it directly from us. To me, it's just too much. I feel that this is a service for everyone, for people. If you want to sell separate, fine, but just to make everyone, so you kind of categorize people one from the other and give one, you have the best one, so it value more. But here, this is the part. Good thing that they included here. They included the part. This is the original that I was telling you about the stabbing. Here is the original one, and here's the edited one. Thankfully, they have it included here, which is good. All of this is an extra for you to read. I love that Marvel always brings a lot of extras, and even though it's a small little omnibus, it does have. And here you have Gene Salicrup, who was actually definitely the editor, the one that allowed this book to happen. It was the one that gave the green light to Todd. He was approved by Marvel. He was the editor then, and he gave him the green light to do this. And he's the one that had to deal with Todd through the process, which was not easy. And he had to deal. There was a lot of back and forth. It was when he left. The Marvel thing, the Spider-Man, he edited in Marvel, and the new editor was the one that in the end the rupture happened between Todd and the new editor. But things happen, that's how it is. But it really, for us, it really kind of gave us the opportunity here, the recolor versions, and going back to what I was saying, it gave us the opportunity to have a movement into the comic books, in the comic book industry, that created Image Comics and a revolution into the entire industry. What now we enjoy in one way. Loved all these extras here, black and white, that we can enjoy. Yeah, some people might disagree with me, might say, well, that was the end of comics. To me, it was not the end, it was just an evolution of the comic book industry. In conclusion, do I recommend this book? I certainly do. I do not recommend it for everyone, though. I don't recommend it for people that dislike Todd McFarlane. I don't recommend it for people that dislike the 90s comics. I recommend it for people like me, people that grew up in the 90s, that lived through the 90s, and love Todd McFarlane. I love Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, Mark Silvestri, all the Image guys. They love this type of thing. Would I consider the best stories Spider-Man stories? No, they're forgettable. I'm just gonna be straight up. They're forgettable. But, the cool part is just the art and the history behind it, and what really represents for comics. It's a different era. Some people hate, some people love. It changed the comic book landscape forever, that's for sure. It was part of it. I don't think it was what initiated that. I think it was just a reflection of the times. And definitely, Todd was in the middle of it. Do I love Todd? Yes, I do. I love Todd. I believe that he has done great things. Really, he's a person that just listening to his, he can be sometimes bizarre, but looking at his interviews, he's a person that thinks so fast. You know, he is very hyper. Rob Liefeld is the same way, but he has a lot of ideas, and he shaped the industry with his toys. After that, we know with Image Comics, with his toy lines, with all the things that he did. Where now we are, even as a statue collector, we owe our thanks to him, because he was the first one that actually started creating action figures that were kind of lifelike, you know, that were more like statues, and that developed into, you know, that's the same thing that later companies like Sideshow Collectibles, even Baldwin Designs, all those companies kind of took a mantle, and they followed part of the same business ideas or principles that he created. So definitely is one of those things that we have to be mindful, and we have to always be thankful. So you know, once again, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate the time. I appreciate that you take the time to watch these lengthy videos. Also, please support this channel. Just follow the links below where you have, you want to be interested to buying this book, you have links for it. Or if you're interested in more merchandise or anything, that just follow the affiliates. Every time you do it, you support this channel. Every time you purchase something through this affiliates, you support this channel. Thank you for, for everything you do and for the time that you spend with me. So God bless you, my friends. I'll see you on the next review.